Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Cannabis Coast to Coast News. This is a special report, one-on-one. I am PCM TV founder Jimmy Young, and I am so proud and honored, actually, to have a great guest on with us this week. His name is Anthony Alegrete. He is the founder of 40 Tons, but we have to give your wife a little credit here, don't we?
Oh yeah, not just my wife, but the three of us, all three of us together founded it together.
And how many years ago was that?
Well, officially it was about 4.5 years ago. Yeah, since like early pandemic. So early 2020.
Right. There you go. Because I remember going to the 40 Tons booth at the first MJ Unpacked, George's first MJ Unpacked in Vegas. And I want to say that was 21. Am I right? 21, does that sound right? Because
Yes.
we had to be vaxxed to get
Yeah.
in, right? And we had to
Well,
wear, yeah.
I
That was,
didn't vax, but yeah.
well, again,
But you did have to get vax.
you
That's right.
had to,
I forgot how we got around it, but yeah, something like that.
there you go. Well, I didn't, again, I'm not afraid. I take shots wherever I go. That being said, couple of things. I know your story, but I want to go right to how did you come up with the name 40 Tons?
Yeah, that's a good answer. Well, the name originally stems. Corvain was the one that originally wanted to call it 40 tons. So in the beginning, when we were coming up with the name, we were trying to figure out what would stand out. And the original newspaper article said California man sentenced to life in prison for 40 tons of weed. And at the time, he's in jail. We don't know if he's going to get out or not. We don't know what's going to happen. We didn't really want to spit in their face and like kind of like uh make fun of the fact that he's in jail for this thing. It's kind of like, throwing it in their face. And he said, well, what's the worst they can do to me? I've already got life. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Okay, so let's just call it 40 tons. Because if we do get you out, it could be a story of second chances and redemption. And so that's what 40 tons was. And then at the time too, there was 40,000 prisoners still locked up. There's 40 acres and a mule. So the number 40 was a really prominent number in the African American community. And so instead of it being four, FORTY, it's 40RTY. And so that's how the name 40 tons came about.
There you go. And of course, you mentioned Corvain Cooper. It was his story that it pretty upsetting. But how many of these have we heard? You know, Anthony, right? I mean,
Mhm.
uh, the factoid that really freaks me out is that there was still over 200,000 arrests for possession of cannabis in this country last year.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Well, it's crazy, and yet this is still a free society and a free market, and money dictates an awful lot in our political system, and I might add, our justice system. And it is not, it's why I have so much admiration actually for you and your company, because you truly are a socially responsible capitalist. You've built the company, you're giving back, you're making a difference, and you got your best friend from Hollywood High School out of jail because of President Trump's in his first term pardoned him in his last, I think it was last week that he had there. I'm not sure if it was before or after January 6th, but it doesn't matter. The good news is your friend got out, right?
Yeah, yeah, we got out. He got out. It took the work of a lot of people. So it was, everybody coming together. It wasn't just one person or one group of people, but a majority and group of people, getting on that bullhorn and pushing. At the time, Clubhouse app was really big, and that allowed us to really get to the whole entire industry, because everybody was inside for the pandemic. And so because we did that, we were able to get to Trump. And there was a lot of, different groups from Mission Green to LPP to Buried Alive Project, Alice Johnson, Freedom Grow, Life for Pot, Can Do Clemency. I mean, the list goes on. There were so many different groups and organizations that all came together where 1 + 1 + 1 equaled 100. And so, yeah, we got them out. We built the brand to get them out to kind of have one centralized area of advocacy. And once we got them out, we hit the ground running, trying to figure out how we can have a piece of this industry ourselves.
Yeah. And California is another planet for me, considering I'm from Massachusetts. I've spent a little time out there doing variety of Rose Bowl, Super Bowl, soccer
Okay.
games back in the day.
Nice.
But but now, of course, I just marvel at it. And I've certainly gotten to know quite a few people from California. You know, when Massachusetts became the first East Coast state to adult use, I
Okay.
uh, I wanted to connect both coasts. And I was watching Max Simon's Green Flower videos.
Okay.
And I learned quite a bit between 2013 and 2018 before I did my first podcast.
Okay.
And and I got to know Max too, which is kind of fun. I saw him at MJ Biz, which was great. And but you know, this is what I was trying to do. But I keep forgetting how big California is. There's quite a few people there. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's a pretty populous state. And I always felt it was a very progressive state, but man, have they screwed up the cannabis industry.
Yeah, they did, man. It's terrible out here. It's a bloodbath. It's just
Is it
the race to the
fixable?
bottom.
Is it fixable?
It's fixable if you get the right people in office to make the right changes.
Okay, fair enough. And we can make that case pretty much from coast to coast too. Because, you know, we still have the power of the vote. And unfortunately, it takes a while to turn over a lot of times in this country.
Hmm.
But, you know, if there's a will, there's a way. Tell us now, we just went over this. I know you're in 3 states now with your brand and or a dispensary. Tell me, please.
Yeah, so right now we're just a brand. We white
Yep.
label the products with the different manufacturers.
Yep.
Um, in fact, this is one of them with Mini Grown in Minnesota. And so we have a hemp product with them that we sell in Minnesota as well as it's direct to consumer. And then we're in New York and California. New York is our big one. We have a partnership with HPI Canna. And then in California, we just work with, a multitude of different people in order to get our products out. We're working on a deal in Massachusetts and a deal in Mississippi at the moment as well.
Great. Well, when you get to Massachusetts, make sure you look me up, please, because I'd
Oh,
love to see. We'll come by and
yeah. You'll
we'll,
be at
we'll,
NECAN, right?
what's that?
You'll be at NECAN?
Oh, yes, I will. Of course. I've come. That's how it all began, by the way, in 2018, March. It was March 20th, 2018, when I did my first podcast in Boston. And it was with a guy by the name of Stu Zakem. I don't know if you know Stu, but he's a PR guy out of New York.
Yeah, he works with Happy Monkey.
Yes, he does. I would consider Vlad a friend. In fact, I had the honor of introducing Vlad to Tommy Chong live on one of our shows back in 2020,
Nice.
which was fun, and it totally spontaneous because I happened to have an interview with him between, I think it was 4:30 and 5 o'clock. And I said, "Hey, have you ever met Tommy Chong?" And he goes, "No, I've always wanted to, but it's never come together." I said, "Well, can you hold on for like 5 minutes? Because he's going to be on hold and he's going to join us after 5 o'clock." And he goes, "Oh my God, I'd love." And that actually happened. And I was very pleased to do it. And of course, now, Anthony, you'll get this. I can go up to Vlad anytime and say, "So who introduced you to Tommy Chong?" And of course, I get credit for that. So I like that. And it's my own little part of the industry, if you will, a little history known to again connect both coasts, and that's really, I think that's really important. Um,
Sure.
you mentioned you have a hemp product too.
Hmm.
So you know what's going on with Delta 8 versus Delta 9 in this country. And I, California, we could talk about California again, because supposedly they banned it. I believe that particular ban expires in a month or so in California. Now they're trying to figure out what they can do. How necessary is it to come up with one regulatory body for that one plant rather than two separate billion-dollar industries? Am I dreaming here?
I mean, you're not wrong. You know what I mean? Like, I get where you're coming from, but I mean, at the same time, the hemp industry is what kind of gave a lifeline to the cannabis industry as a whole because of all of the overtaxation and regulation, right? The current way that the regulated market's working right now is not going to work.
Right.
We're the only industry that's taxed at the level that we're at, over compliance, maximum taxation, and we're never going to be able to survive. So the farm bill is kind of like, a loophole that allowed us, meaning the industry, to generate revenue, right? I definitely feel that there should be a lot more, there should be more not restrictions, what's the word I'm looking for? Regulations on like how hemp products are tested and making sure that we have clean and safe product and making sure things like that. Absolutely. How we go about doing it, I'm not quite sure.
And,
Um,
and
it's a quagmire wrapped in a conundrum. Like it's not an easy thing to solve.
No, it's not. And yet having, and I've talked to the hemp people, obviously, and I've talked to the Delta 9 people as well. And, I support the license industry for the reasons you just outlined. It's tough to survive, let
Mhm,
alone thrive. And that
mhm.
is the mantra right now of this industry. And I cringed when I had to report on last week in the news that there are 4 governors in legal states that now want to tax the cannabis industry, the Delta 9, more to make up for shortfalls in budgets. And I'm like, this plant is being used and abused, not by those who use and use and consume it, but by the people who think they know how to control it or
Right.
want to control it because they know that it's a moneymaker, and yet they can't figure out how to do it right. And it's so frustrating. And you're in
So
it, man. You
frustrating.
got it, right? I
Yeah.
mean, can you give me an example of perhaps one anecdote where you said, how is this still going on in 2025? How many? Can you narrow it down to just one little anecdotal story that drives you nuts? And you say to yourself, what? There's so many that are out there that, we talked about the 200,000 people that have already been arrested in 2024 for possession crimes in legal states.
Right. So definitely things on that side, right? Like how are we still locking people up for this plant that people are making millions, billions of dollars on, right? So like that's the biggest one. Second thing is, we were hoping to get a big clemency push from the president of the United States. That didn't happen,
Nope.
right? As far as like the business side is concerned, what I don't understand is like how something could be so drastically different from, county to county. You know, there's no other industry in this country where each state is like its own country,
Hmm.
right? So like we're just basically imploding. Like we're just this is a big cash cow, right? It's just a cash. What was that movie? Where the money kept being sunk into the house. It was like a house pit, the money pit.
Money
That's
pit.
what,
Yep.
yeah, that's what this cannabis industry is. It's just a big money pit. And the problem is because there's also no regulation and like oversight on the retail side, people don't pay their bills either.
Right.
So then you get this constant cycle of just these people not paying these people and those people not paying those people, along with us having to pay Uncle Sam what stuff that we can't afford. Like it's just it's one big issue. So, anecdotally, I mean, I think just the whole entire industry needs to really be overhauled. I think we should have one tax, very similar to like, when you're buying food at the store, right? Just
Mhm.
one simple tax, whatever that is, make it what it is, and then we're good, right? And if this thing was legalized by the feds, right, and we were federally legal, we would have something like that, right? But
Yep.
being taxed at the state level, the county level, the city level, the this level, the that level, and then having to pay all this extra money for all these other services that we need, like um, all the different different parts of the supply chain, it's impossible for us to be able to survive when we're bringing home 20 to 30 cents on every dollar that we're making. And
Right.
that's when you're taxed at effectively a 50 to 60% tax rate, and that's before overhead, that's
Right.
before all the cost of goods, that's before everything. I mean, how can one survive?
Yeah. And you certainly can't write off regular business expenses yet, because we
That's
all know
another
about
one.
280E. Um, and from an industry perspective, how frustrating, well, you've already mentioned one frustration. You expected the outgoing administration to do more. They did not. They came up short. And then they turned it over to the next administration. And I'm not using names here. Let's just make it the prior and the current. And that now, um, it looks like it looks bad. Okay. Every single guy that the new president has put in place is a prohibitionist, especially at the
Right.
DEA. That Terrence Cole guy, I mean, who's he trying to appease now? Because he was supposed to be kind of, hey, I think Florida's got it right. That's what he said when he, used cannabis as a tool to help his ratings
Campaign,
really at the
right?
time. And that there he is. Now he's in the White House. So it is I mean, are you confident at all? Or how, let me ask this question. Can the industry survive if it goes back to Schedule One, like where it is right now?
That's a really good question. I actually think that it should stay Schedule 1 until it becomes descheduled. Going to Schedule 3, I don't feel is going to be a good thing for us. Yes, it's going to help us with 280E. Yes, it's going to help us, in terms of giving us safe banking, perhaps. But it won't do anything on the criminal justice side. And number two, there's already precedent for operating and distribution of a Schedule 3 substance, rules and regulations. What makes us think that when it goes Schedule 3 that we're not going to still have to uphold those same licenses? Where you have to get a DEA license in order to sell a Schedule 3 um, drug. So
Mhm.
what makes us think that that's going to have any, like, what makes us think we're going to get grandfathered in?
Right.
So I'm scared of Schedule 3, right? I don't know. There's
A lot of
nothing.
them.
There's nothing that says what's going to happen if it goes to Schedule 3. Are we going to be okay? Are we not going to be okay? Understanding that this plant is not really like a drug, because with a drug it's exactly the same every single time, whereas with
Right.
the plant it's slightly different. So therefore there's, I forget what it is, but because it's not exactly the same every single time, it's not technically a drug. I forget exactly what it is. Forgive me for the lack of knowledge,
Yeah.
but you get what I'm trying to say. So it's like I don't know if Schedule 3 is going to be a good idea. With Schedule 1, there's no precedent. It is what it is. So it's like we can make our own rules once it goes. We can make the new rules and regulations once it gets descheduled.
You'd rather see a long-lasting reform than a Band-Aid.
Right, because I think the Band-Aid, so here's the analogy. It may take us 5 years to get long-lasting reform
Yeah.
versus getting a Band-Aid that we get in 2 years, but then that 2 years sets us back 10 years.
Right.
So do you wait the 5 years so that you get the full relief, or do you wait 2 years to get 50% of that, but then now you got to wait another 10 years to get the other 50%? That's the analogy.
And the reality, I might add. And by the way, I do not consider it a drug. It's a plant medicine that impacts every human being or mammal differently because of this endocannabinoid system that they've discovered and figured out this is how the plant interacts with every mammal. And when you go to a dispensary and you try to explain this to people that come into these dispensaries, and of course everybody's still buying THC percentage, Anthony, I think you're savvy enough to know that's not necessarily means it's going to be the most the plant that gets you the best high. I mean, it has a lot to do with flavonoids, and by the way, it has more to do with individual use and tolerance than anything else. Am I wrong?
No, you're
Okay, good.
correct.
Yeah, look, there's a reason why I'm fascinated by all the different aspects. I never thought that I'd have to learn a little bit about botany and chemistry and science. Law, I can understand. And I do want to get into prison reform because you have a tremendous insight on this for a couple of different reasons. One in particular is that you spent some time behind bars. And do you believe that our prison system, where they punish you for behavior, for your consequences, makes sense versus rehab and reform of prisoners, which is
Well,
the way they do it in Europe?
I mean, of course, I agree with the latter. Like, that's how it should be, right?
Yeah.
Um, our prison system is screwed. Our prison system is not about reform. Our prison system is, gladiator academies, right?
Right.
They're very dangerous. In the lower levels, it's not as bad, but it's still bad.
Yeah.
In the high levels, it's extremely ruthlessly dangerous.
Yeah.
And there's really no real rehabilitation that's going on. It's almost like it's a prison industrial complex, designed to get free labor out of people. It's tough, man, and it's challenging because, you've got cannabis criminal justice, and then you've got the whole entire country's criminal justice, right? And sometimes what we want for cannabis criminal justice doesn't align with the whole country's criminal justice and vice versa, right? And so it's a challenge, man. I think that we definitely need a big overhaul. I think we definitely need to stop locking people up just for the smallest offenses. Start coming up with, better programs to help fight drug abuse, programs to help fight, poverty and some of the other things that are causing so many people to go to jail. I mean, obviously, violent crimes and different things of that nature, you need punishments. And I'm not even saying that you shouldn't send people to jail if they commit crimes. If the punishment, I mean, if the crime is a crime, that's fine, but it's the punishments don't fit the crimes,
Right.
right? You don't send people to jail for 20 years for an ounce of weed,
Yeah.
right? You don't sell people to jail for 40 years over an ounce of crack. You just don't do that. You know what I mean? Like there has to be some sort of like overhaul, I think, on the guidelines of what the punishment should be for the various crimes. And I think nonviolent drug offenses have the worst rap. You could get more time for a nonviolent drug offense than if you were a murderer or a pedophile.
Right.
And that's what needs to change.
It absolutely does. And I know, I said I want to keep this under 20. I think that you and I could talk to each other for hours, which I know you don't
We
have.
could do this again on a round two.
Well, actually, what I'm thinking of doing, one of the things we've kicked around is getting people like yourself who have a great story to tell. You're in multiple states and have different state operators because you have different rules in every state. You might as well take advantage of the fact that I've got correspondents across the country for my news show. I've got like 820 of them now. And, finding people from California or from Minnesota or from Michigan or from Maine and Massachusetts, New York. I mean, every single state, like you said, different rules and regulations. Here in Massachusetts, just so you know, one of the biggest things that they did was something called a host community agreement. So not only did towns or cities have the opportunity to opt out of having cannabis dispensaries in their towns or cities, they said, if you're going to be here, we're going to get an extra 3% on top of everything else you paid, because we know we'll have to pay overtime for police. And we know that crime's going to go up. And we know that there's going to be traffic issues. And none of those things have happened, 4, 5, 6 years in. And yet they are still collecting those 3%. There's been a couple of lawsuits. Do you have faith in the court system that they're actually going to get things right at some point?
That's a trick question.
Yes, it is. I know it is. That's what I do. Hey, you don't have to answer that. You know what? If you'd like to think about that, and we can bring it up the next time we talk, because I have enjoyed getting to know you a little bit, and I really salute what you do. I really do.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it, man. It's a double-sided question, right? Because I do agree. I do think that it can work itself out, but I also think like, it's the way that we're currently going about it ain't working. So we got to come up with a new system.
Right.
So, let's definitely talk about that on the next go around and get into more details about it. But, I appreciate everything that you're doing, Jimmy. Thank you for, all of the positive comments that you said about us, as well as just, what you're doing out there in the community and the worlds of media and spreading, these messages. So much love and respect, and anything that we can do to help, we will.
I appreciate that. Indeed, we like to tell the stories of the industry in their own words. And my vision was to build an army of multimedia journalists and podcast hosts who are documenting the fight to end cannabis prohibition. And I believe we pull that off every week with our news show, Cannabis Coast to Coast News with Elena Pinto. It gives me a lot of self-satisfaction for that. But there is still so much more to talk about, so much more to impact. And now that you have a new friend in Massachusetts, Anthony, I expect to hear from you if you come up. I'll see you at NECAN. That's what I'm hearing.
Yes, for
Terrific.
sure.
That'll be great. We'll do another sit-down interview then, and we won't have to do this on Zoom. It'll be nice to see you in 3D, because I have a lot of friends that I've never seen in 3D before. It's bizarre. It's 5 years after the pandemic, and I still haven't met some of these people. So, Anthony from 40 Tons, thank you so much for taking some time to join us here on our special report of One-on-One.
I think I messed up. Did you know there's a place that covers all the cannabis news you need? Welcome to Pro Cannabis Media, your go-to for all things cannabis. PCM is the CNBC of weed, bringing you the latest news and talk shows with a twist. We've got 16 state correspondents and multimedia journalists from around the US and Canada.
Hey everybody, it's Brandon Jones with Be Green Distribution with the Missouri Cannabis Report.
I'm Karen Black from Greenfinger Consulting with the Arizona Cannabis Report.
I'm Amy Carter from Michigan Weedsters.
Andrew Behringer here reporting from Washington, D.C.
Debbie Fazy with the Canadian Toke of the Week.
It all started back in 2018 when founder Jimmy Young kicked off the In the Weeds podcast. His mission? Documenting the fight to end cannabis prohibition. Fast forward to today and we've got Cannabis Coast to Coast with Elena Pinto, delivering the nation's only TV-style cannabis news show.
Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of Cannabis Coast to Coast, PCM TV's weekly roundup of industry news from California to New York. I'm Elena Pinto.
As of August 2024, PCM has racked up over 1.2 million views and 14.5 million impressions on our YouTube channel. With 15,000 subscribers and growing, our reach is spreading like wildfire. PCM's website, YouTube, Rumble, Discord, Roku, Twitch, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and even our very own PCM TV app. Get your cannabis news fix with Pro Cannabis Media. We're here to keep you informed and entertained. Stay tuned and stay lifted.